Germany produced 1,347 Tiger tanks during World War II. They cost enormous resources, took months to build, and while impressive, didn't stop the Soviet advance or change the Eastern Front outcome. Meanwhile, the Type 21 U-boat, the most revolutionary submarine of the war, arrived too late. Only two became operational before Germany surrendered. But here's the question nobody asks. What if Germany had reversed those priorities? What if they'd canceled the Tiger program in 1942 and rushed 500 Type 21 submarines into service by 1943 instead? The Type 21 could travel at 17 knots underwater, outrun destroyer escorts, operate submerged for days, and attack without ever surfacing. It negated every advantage the Allies had won in the Battle of the Atlantic in 1943, and Germany chose prestige over effectiveness. Let me show you what Germany threw away. First, we need to understand what made the Type 21 revolutionary. This wasn't just another U-boat, it was a complete paradigm shift in submarine warfare. Every U-boat that came before it, the Type 7 workhorses that fought the Battle of the Atlantic, were really surface ships that could submerge temporarily. They spent most of their time on the surface, only diving to attack or evade. They were slow underwater, maybe 7 knots maximum, and could only stay down a few hours before their batteries died and they had to surface to recharge. The Type 21 was the opposite. It was a true submarine designed to operate underwater almost indefinitely. 17 knots submerged, faster than most destroyer escorts, which topped out around 15 knots. That meant it could outrun the ships hunting it while staying underwater. Battery capacity 3 times larger than the Type 7, allowing it to remain submerged for up to 3 days. Hydraulic torpedo loading system that was nearly silent, reducing sonar detection by 80%. The tactical implications were staggering. The Type 7 had to surface to attack convoys, making it visible to radar and vulnerable to aircraft. The Type 21 could attack entirely submerged using passive sonar, fire its torpedoes, and slip away without ever being seen. Allied radar, which had been decisive in winning the Battle of the Atlantic in 1943, was useless against a submarine that never surfaced. Aircraft patrols, which had slaughtered U-boat crews throughout 1943 and 1944, couldn't find targets they couldn't see. The Type 21 could potentially survive 10 times longer than a Type 7, and survival rate is everything in naval warfare. An experienced U-boat crew is worth more than the submarine itself. Keep those crews alive and they become more effective with each patrol. The Type 21 wasn't just a better submarine, it was a weapon that could have fundamentally changed the strategic balance in the Atlantic. So why didn't Germany mass produce it? Let's look at the historical timeline. 1943, Germany finalizes the Type 21 design. Production begins in 1944, hampered by Allied bombing and resource shortages. The first boats become operational in April 1945, just weeks before Germany surrendered. Too little, too late. By the time the Type 21 was ready, the war was already lost. But what if Germany had made different choices earlier? Here's the realistic alternative timeline. 1942. Germany cancels or severely limits Tiger production. The resources, steel, man-hours, and industrial capacity go to submarines instead. The Type 21 design is rushed, tested, and refined throughout 1942. By mid-1943, the first production models are operational. By early 1945, the 500-boat fleet is at full strength. Now let's talk about what 500 Type 21 U-boats could actually do. The Battle of the Atlantic in 1943 was a turning point, May 1943 specifically, when Germany lost 41 U-boats in a single month. Allied radar, escort carriers, long-range aircraft, and code-breaking had made the Atlantic a death trap for submarines. The old Type 7 U-boats were forced to withdraw from the North Atlantic convoy routes. The Allies had won. Shipping losses dropped dramatically. The Atlantic was secure for the massive buildup of troops and supplies needed for D-Day. But that victory depended entirely on the Type 7's vulnerability. It had to surface. and when it surfaced, it died. The Type 21 eliminated that vulnerability. Put 500 of them in the Atlantic in 1944, and suddenly Allied radar and aircraft advantages are negated. You can't depth charge what you can't find. You can't bomb what never surfaces. Escort carriers, which had been so effective against Type 7s, become much less useful when the submarines they're hunting never expose themselves. Let's run the numbers. 500 U-boats, assuming 2 patrols per month, targeting 2 ships per patrol. That's a theoretical maximum of 2,000 ships sunk per month. Unrealistic because submarines miss, have mechanical failures, and face operational constraints, but a realistic figure might be 500 to 800 ships per month, similar to the worst periods of 1942. The Allies were producing about 1,400 Liberty ships per month in 1943 and 1944, massive industrial capacity, seemingly unlimited. But here's the problem. They were counting on not losing ships at 1942 rates. Allied planning assumed the Atlantic was secure. Suddenly, losing 500 to 800 ships per month again would be catastrophic. Not immediately war-losing, but strategically disruptive in ways that cascade. And this brings us to D-Day, June 6, 1944, Operation Overlord. The Allied invasion of Normandy required over 5,000 ships to land and supply 150,000 troops. After the initial landing, the invasion force needed roughly 500,000 tons of supplies per month shipped across the Atlantic: fuel, ammunition, food, vehicles, reinforcements, all crossing an ocean that was supposed to be safe. With 500 Type 21 U-boats operating, the Atlantic is no longer safe, not even close. Convoy losses spike, supply shipments are disrupted. The Allies face a choice: proceed with D-Day as planned and risk having your invasion force undersupplied and vulnerable, or delay until you can guarantee supply lines. Realistically, they'd delay 6 months, maybe a year, while they develop countermeasures and build up reserves. D-Day might happen in late 1944 or early 1945 instead of June 1944, and that delay matters enormously. Every month D-Day is delayed is a month the Soviets are fighting Germany alone in the East, a month more of V-2 rockets hitting London, a month more for Germany to potentially develop other weapons or fortified defenses. It doesn't win Germany the war, but it buys time. Now, let's be honest about what this doesn't solve. 500 Type 21 U-boats don't solve Germany's oil crisis. Submarines need fuel too, and by 1944, Germany was desperately short on oil. They don't stop the Soviet advance from the east. U-boats don't fight land battles. They don't prevent Allied strategic bombing. B-17s and B-24s are still hitting German factories. They don't solve Germany's manpower shortage. The Wehrmacht is running out of soldiers regardless of how many U-boats are in the Atlantic. And critically, they don't affect the Manhattan Project. The atomic bomb is still in development, and by 1945 or 1946, it still ends the war decisively if conventional invasion hasn't already succeeded. What the Type 21 fleet does do is extend the war, delay Allied victory by 6 to 12 months, force the Allies to divert enormous resources back to anti-submarine warfare, resources that could have been used offensively. Potentially, if the Atlantic situation becomes dire enough, open possibilities for a negotiated peace rather than unconditional surrender, though this is the least likely outcome. Higher Allied casualties? Absolutely. More ships sunk means more sailors dead. More supply disruptions mean more soldiers without ammunition or food. The human cost of Germany buying an extra year is measured in tens of thousands of additional deaths on all sides. But here's the critical calculation. Even 500 Type 21 U-boats can't sink ships faster than America can produce them. The United States built 2,700 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945. American industrial capacity was so overwhelming that Germany could slow it down but never stop it. Economics still favored the Allies. Germany just buys time. So why didn't this happen? Why did Germany choose Tigers over Type 21 U-boats? Hitler's obsession with tanks was part of it. He believed tanks won wars, a mentality left over from World War I breakthrough tactics. Tigers were visible, impressive, could be used in propaganda. Submarines were defensive weapons, hidden beneath the waves, less glamorous. Hitler wanted offensive weapons he could show the German people and the world. And there was genuine strategic blindness. German leadership didn't fully realize how revolutionary the Type 21 was until too late. Admiral Dönitz, the submarine commander who understood U-boat potential, only became head of the Navy in 1943. By then, tank production was too entrenched to cancel. The Type 21 program was approved, but without the priority or resources it needed. But here's where it gets interesting. What did Germany lose by not building Tigers? On the Eastern Front, Tigers and Panthers provided crucial armored punch against Soviet T-34s and IS-2s. They were excellent defensive weapons, able to knock out enemy tanks at ranges Soviet guns couldn't match. The Battle of Kursk in 1943 featured the debut of the Tiger and Panther in large numbers. Without them, German armor would have been outmatched more decisively. But consider this, Germany lost those battles anyway, with Tigers, with Panthers, with every advantage German engineering could provide. The Tigers didn't stop the Soviet advance. They slowed it, made it more costly, but didn't prevent it. The Eastern Front was lost due to strategic overextension, resource shortages, and overwhelming Soviet numerical superiority. Better tanks helped tactically, but didn't change the strategic outcome. So the calculation becomes, would disrupting the Atlantic and delaying the Western Front matter more than having better tanks on the Eastern Front? Arguably, yes. Tigers provided tactical advantages in specific battles that Germany still lost. The Type 21 would provide strategic advantages across the entire Atlantic theater that could delay Allied victory overall. It's a trade-off with no perfect answer. But given that Germany lost both theaters historically, choosing the weapon system that could buy time rather than the weapon system that won individual battles seems like the smarter strategic choice. Here's the conclusion. Germany producing 500 Type XXI U-boats instead of Tigers and Panthers doesn't win them World War II. The fundamental strategic situation remains. Germany is outnumbered, outproduced, fighting on too many fronts against enemies with more resources. The atomic bomb still ends the war by 1945 or 1946, even if conventional invasion is delayed. The Allies still win. But it buys Germany time, 6 to 12 months of extended war. It forces the Allies to divert resources and attention. It increases casualties on all sides. It potentially opens negotiating possibilities that didn't exist historically, though unconditional surrender remains the most likely end. And it highlights one of the great what-ifs of World War II. Germany had the technology to potentially change the strategic balance in 1943. They had the industrial capacity to build submarines instead of heavy tanks. They made a choice based on prestige, propaganda, and Hitler's personal preferences rather than strategic effectiveness. And that choice cost them dearly. The Type 21 was everything the Allies feared. Fast, silent, deadly, nearly impossible to detect or destroy with existing technology. Arriving too late, it never got to prove what it could do. But the potential was there. And if Germany had recognized that potential earlier and committed to it fully, the war might have lasted longer and cost more lives. The Type 21X could have changed the timeline of Allied victory, but only if Germany had valued effectiveness over appearance, strategy over prestige, and reality over the symbolism of invincible Tiger tanks. In the end, they chose wrong. And that choice is just one more reason why Germany lost World War II.